ladies and gentlemen, this is Trisha with Insectopia, and today I thought that we would look at a mole cricket. Now, I only have one specimen of a mole cricket, and it was the first ever specimen that I tried because it was so large. I tried to, sometimes with bigger insects, people suggest that you dissect them a little bit. You take out their guts and you fill them with cotton so that they don't rot, or especially with kind of softer bodied insects like this mole cricket. So that's all to say that I didn't do a very good job of that. It was my first time kind of trying. So when we get back to the abdomen area, you'll see that there's some cotton and stuff mixed in. But I think that's one of the reasons why we hadn't sketched this guy in the past. But he has such a cool head, and he has such cool legs, and his wings are awesome. So even though he's got kind of a wonky abdomen, I think he'll still be a really cool insect to sketch. Now, mole crickets are their own family of insect, and they're in the family, we call them Grillotelpidae. That is spelled like this. All right. They are what we call an orthopteran, so they are in the same order as crickets and grasshoppers and katydids, but they are their own family of insect. Because they are called mole crickets, they do like to spend most of their time digging down into the soil. You can see they have these really, really awesome digging legs up here in the front. They almost look like they have fingers. And that is, that's just a part of their legs. They have adapted legs for digging, and we call those legs fossorial legs. And the way that I remember that is fossils are underground, and that's like fossorial legs are digging underground. All right, so that is our insect for today. Why don't we go ahead and get started sketching it? Because I want to sketch the mole cricket from a lateral point of view or from the side rather than from a dorsal or top point of view, I'm going to be turning my paper 90 degrees so that I have the length of my paper to get our mole cricket perfectly. And depending on how we're feeling after we get our mole cricket all sketched out, I might turn our mole cricket so that we're looking at it head on, because he has some really cool facial features. For instance, right about here, you can see the antenna, and here is the leg, but this coming out right there, that is one of the palps for the mouth. So it's one of those things that helps push the food into their chewing mouth parts. Because just like any grasshopper or cricket, mole crickets have chewing mouth parts. I'm going to go ahead and leave Grillotelpidae mole cricket here with us as we're going ahead and sketching it. So let's see. Just like any insect, as we are beginning the sketch, I like to start with the head and move back from there. We are making a very light, I have to write our name first. Grillotelpidae. And if you would like the information off of its label, this specimen was collected on August 17th of 2009 in Adair, Iowa. And the other information that we like to know before we get started is a measurement. So I'll go ahead and take our mole cricket here and put it in front of a ruler for us. From the front of the head to the back of the abdomen, our mole cricket is approximately 3 centimeters. All right, so our head is it's kind of a longer head. So when I'm going when I'm going and giving the sketch of my head, I'm going to start with this angulate line, and then I'm going to make a D shape that's going towards the ground. That's going to be kind of the overall shape of our head here. But keep in mind that this is a very light outline just to get the body shape taken care of. And then we're going to zoom in and we're going to look at all of its features. So it's got this head that's kind of down like this. And then this next segment that looks like this plate that goes right behind his head, from here to all the way about here, that section is what we call the pronotum. It's the first segment of the thorax, and it runs back like this, comes out, comes down. This is also where those fossorial or digging legs are connected. Those digging legs are connected to the first segment of the thorax. All right, let's go ahead and move our specimen back. So this is the lateral view for the midsection of our thorax here. The middle leg is found right here, and it's a basic walking leg, because even if insects have specialized front legs and specialized hind legs, regularly, they just have a very, very basic middle leg to kind of keep them stabilized so that they can, walk. So I'm going to give myself kind of this center line, and that's going to be where those wings come down. And then from here, I'm going to say that this is where our middle leg gets connected. There's kind of a square here. And then our hind leg comes back like this. And even though mole crickets are a digging insect and they've got fossorial front legs, they also have very large hind legs that almost look like jumping legs. So we're going to make sure that this section right about here, that this long rectangle, that's kind of like the hip bone for the hind leg. We call it the coxae, spelled Coxae, and then the leg comes off of that segment. All right, so I've got both of those squares. Those are going to be our connections for our legs. We have where the wings come down, but you'll notice that the wings also come up, and if we looked at it from the top, we would see that from here, the wings are very thin and narrow at the end, but they're kind of wide here at the base. So we can annotate that or sketch that by doing something like this, giving it that an angle, and then making it nice and long and thin. And I'll go ahead and we'll scooch it down so you can see the abdomen. So that little white stuff, that little bit of cotton right there, is not supposed to be there. That is a little bit from where I had stuffed the specimen back in 2009 when I was first starting my, first college level collection. So you can see that these wings up here on the top, they're long and narrow, and they do go even longer than the abdomen's length. So you can see our abdomen ends about here. And these guys that are long little tails coming off of the end of our abdomen, we call those cerci, spelled C-E-R-C-I. They're generally sensory organs. I'm not sure what the exact purpose for mole crickets they have. You regularly see cerci on many insects, especially many what we call orthopteroids. So not only crickets, grasshoppers, and katydids and grasshoppers, but you also see cerci on praying mantids and walking sticks and cockroaches. And earwigs. Alright, so I made my wings just a little bit longer for that purpose. And I'm going to say my abdomen is probably going to end right about here. So I'll go ahead and give that shape here. And then we have those long cerci, and it looks like if I had scooted my specimen all the way to the front of the paper, I would have room for all of the length of the cerci. But as it stands, it looks like my cerci are going to be going off of the paper. And that'll be fine. Maybe I'll make the abdomen just a little bit shorter so the cerci can be longer and they can stay on exactly on the page. Something like that. We'll figure it out. But that gives us an overall body shape and an overall body image to work off of. Is orthopteroid an actual super classification or just a handy way of describing a lot of dudes? That's a great question. Orthopteroids used to be a classification, I guess is the answer. I was taught orthopteroids. Let me go ahead and look it up for you. So back in the day, a long time ago, all of the what we now call orthopteroids are used to be all in the same order, Orthoptera, and then we separated them all out. And so we claim that word orthopteroids as just historically what used to be all of the orthopterans. But it is now, so it is not an official super order now, but it is, it's a term that a lot of entomologists recognize as all of those simple metamorphosis insects that used to be orthopterans. Good question. All right, so we've got our overall body shape, head, thorax, abdomen. We've got our cerci taken care of. So we're going to go ahead and zoom in on our heads. Love learning how descriptions evolve. That's awesome. There's a part of me that wants to turn our specimen so that we can see it head on anyway, because I want to show you what it looks like. Maybe I can turn our specimen so that we can see just the side of its head. We might have to turn it to the other side. There we go. Cool. I love mole cricket heads. All right, so this is the side of our mole cricket's head. Generally, those antennae aren't all like bendy and curly. Normally, they'll keep them straight, and will even sometimes lay them. When they're digging, they just lay along their backs. But then when they're out in the open, they will have their antennae forward. So just depending on how you want to sketch your friend here. If we look at right about here, that's our compound eye for our mole cricket. And then that little guy right there, that's our simple eye. We call it an ocellus. That's the individual name for multiple ocelli. And now I want to know if it has 3. Give me a second. We're going to look. So if I go ahead and we look at the head from a dorsal point of view, we're just going to go ahead and look at it a little bit before we sketch it. Just familiarize ourselves with the body part. So if we look at it from the top, you can see that there is an ocellus on the other side. So that is 1, 2, and I wonder if we looked at her exactly from the front, if we would find her third ocellus. Maybe not. So I am not seeing a third one, a third simple eye. That's kind of cool. Because most insects that have ocelli have 3 of them, and they have them in a triangular form on their head. This mole cricket here has one facing to the left and one facing to the right, but they don't have the central one. Okay. If we zoom down closer to our mouth parts, we can see this triangular piece here. That's our mandible. And this little lip that goes above the mandible, that's the labrum, or the upper lip. And then we've got these guys. Those are our mouth fingers. We call them palps. All right, so I think it's about time to sketch. I think we know all of those features now. All right, so we have a mostly rounded front of our head, but what I believe we want is something that's actually a little more pointed. I want to get a little bit of a better angle. That's better. All right, we're going to turn our specimen just a little bit so she has a better angle. Because I wanted to see not only the eye and the antenna, but I also wanted to see where the palps connected to the head. There's a whole lot of stuff happening on the head. It might take us a minute to sketch all the pieces. All right, let's get going. Where do I want to start? I always like to start up here close to where the eye is. I like to add the compound eye first. Our eye is going to be right about there. So our compound eye is got not a huge compound eye, right? Because this is a mole cricket, so it does not rely on its sight most of the time. Most of the time it relies on other sensory because it's underground. That's also why it has such small ocelli, probably why he only has 2 rather than 3, but also why he has such long cerci, because those are chemical, those pick up like chemicals, and so they're a sensory that's not eyes, not sight. All right, I am pretty happy with where I think the angle of the pronotum comes through, so I'm gonna actually get this angle darkened first. So when we zoom in and we start adding these features, what I try to do is take some of these lines that I know where I want them, and I start darkening them up. So it looks like the front of our pronotum is pretty good. We've got our eyes taken care of, and then we're gonna just work ourselves out from here. So I believe the front of the head is good, but we're gonna have to change a lot of the features after the eyes. So if we look at our compound eye, we have a little bit in front of it. We have the antennal socket, or where the antennae are connected to. you can see that that first segment of the antenna is nice and wide and thick. That's where it connects to the head. Then you've got another segment that's actually about half that, but it's still pretty, it's still like a pretty solid segment. It's, that's the scape and then the pedicel. The rest of the antennal segments, we call them the flagellum. And I'm going to go ahead and add our antenna up here and towards the back of its pronotum because it's not going to be interacting with the legs. So I shouldn't have to worry about anything. So after our first two segments, we can go ahead and give ourselves a line from one end and maybe go about that long. That should be about right, about halfway back into our pronotum. And then at the very end, it's narrow and it gets a little bit wider until it's about as wide as the pedicel. And then the rest of these segments are very, very fine segments. Now, keep in mind that exoskeleton is like a suit of armor. The exoskeleton, or the chitin part, doesn't bend. So insects, in their antenna, you think of the antenna as almost being like ropes. They can move and bend in any direction they want, and that's because they have so many segments here. Those segments are the only places the antenna can bend. So I'm going to go ahead and add the front of our headline. I accidentally put it into the antenna, so we got to fix that really quick. There we go. All right, so we have our eye and we have our antenna, and then right after that, that's where our mandible starts. So let's see. Like that. So the bottom of this piece right here is going to go to where we thought the end of the head was going to be. So from here, we're going to go to about here underneath our eye. And then we're going to come back around. We're going to connect that up. So that's actually what the head is going to look like in shape without the mouth parts. But now we have to add those mouth parts. So right here at the base, let's see, there also looks like there's a, I need to add just a little bit of a knob here. Yeah, I like that better. So we are looking at that mandible, or that little triangle right there. It almost even has a little bit of red on it. These guys do have some pretty wicked chewing mouth parts. They need to be able to chew through roots and things like that as they are digging around. So we're going to go ahead and add this little triangular part, and I think mine just got a little bit too big. I want to shorten mine up just a little bit. That's about right. So we've got that mandible here. Now up on the top there is this, we call it the labrum. I'm going to go ahead and write that in here just in case you haven't seen it written before. It's the labrum, and that's the upper lip. So that's going to be right here. And it just comes out and it is rounded, and it even goes a little bit past the mandible space, but it's still in line with our head here. All right. Then I'm going to go ahead and change the, that's a robber fly maggot. Change the focus of our microscope. Come on, friend. All right. I think I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so we can see the entirety of that palp. I believe that these long ones are going to be what we call the maxillary palps. So these long ones here, they almost look like they're connected way back way back kind of underneath the head. They are connected to the maxilla, which is underneath the mandibles but above the lower lip. It's another it's another mouth part, but a lot of times it has two mouth fingers, or those two palps up there in front. They are multi-segmented. If we were to count those segments, we can count 1. I think this is 2 and 3. I was just trying to count those. I think that is. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those palps look 6 segmented. That's a whole lot of segments for a maxillary palp. A lot of times when we're looking at maxillary palps of other insects, we will count 2 or 3 segments. So you like learning about adaptations and how things have evolved. Sometimes I'll have students that mention, all right, so I'm just adding these palps underneath the head. A lot of times I have students, and those students, they'll ask me, like, hey, sometimes the palps, the mouth fingers, look a little bit like legs. What's up with that? And so what's up with that is that back in the day, there's some people that actually, there are people who believe that the animal that, like, all insects originated from was an animal that had many, many, many legs. And then those legs adapted and changed over time to have different purposes, have different adaptations. And then eventually the legs in the front, they were only used for eating, and then they turned into mouth parts. So, like, the thought is that back in the day, the mandibles were a leg, and the palps were a leg, and they were all legs that had functions, and then over time they adapted and changed into the mouth. Kind of crazy. All right, so we've got that one maxillary palp that's nice and long like that. Because we're looking at it from a lateral point of view, I'm not going to be adding the other side, but you can if you would like. The other palp that you can see is what we call the labial palps. And those are the palps that are connected to the bottom lip. And you can see them right here. They're kind of shorter. I think they're probably only 2 segmented, one coming out this way and one coming out down. They're shorter and they're closer to the mouth. But if you wanted to, we can also add those. I would probably add the labial palp right about here, and then do one segment that came down. That's a really awesome looking insect so far. From the front of the head, she does have some, like, really cool lines on the front of the head, so I'm going to give her those in there. She does have fine hair all over her head, so if you, I'm not sure if it's male or female. It does have fine hair all over its head, so if you would like, you can go ahead and add some of that texturing. I would like to scooch on back. I think we've gotten most of that head taken care of. And I do have to turn our specimen back around so we're looking at the correct side. All right, so first I want to finalize the shape of the pronotum. My keyboard tried to run away from me. All right, so we're going to be adding our pronotal shape. Now, it looks like I might want to make my pronotum go just a little bit higher above the head. I'm going to make it come back down just a little bit. Like that. And then we want it to swoop up towards the end and then curve around. I made it very straight, and now I want to add some of that more fine detail by giving it that little bit of a wave in there. So coming back down and then coming back up, I want to go, sometimes I'll even think about where I want to end. So I want to end right about here, and I'll just add the, is that strong? It might be too strong. Try this one. As long as you've got that nice rounded end here. I think what I missed is something. Like that. I'm pretty happy with that shape. All right, and this U is very realistic to its body also, so I'm going to give it this strong angle, but right in here, that's where the leg is going to start happening. So I don't feel the need to kind of finalize all of that in there. We could, if we wanted, go ahead and zoom in on the pronotum. I think that it's actually a pretty cool body part because even though it looks solid, if you zoom in on it, it is covered in fine, almost velvety hair. So connected to our pronotum is our first leg. We call it the pro leg, right? So we are looking right now at the pro leg, and it is adapted for digging. So we've got a couple of things happening here. This, I've got to delete that picture. All right. This right here is the femur. This segment here with all of the really cool, like, digging fingers, that is what we call the tibia. And then I think I would have to look a little bit closer to find the tarsal segments because it does have tarsi. But let's go ahead and sketch the femur and the tibia first, and then we'll go ahead and scooch it around and see if we can find those tarsal segments. I think that they're more easily seen on the inside. I think that they're kind of hidden. So I'll go ahead and show you that after we're done sketching this. So our femur, oh, and I'm going to try to keep my legs away from the head because I hate when the legs disrupt all of my really cool mouth parts. So what I'm going to do is take my femur like this. That shape? I'm going to have to make it a little bit longer. I'm making this light as I kind of test my shapes really quick before we get something solid. But it is connecting in here to our pronotum. Let's see. Sometimes it is connecting to kind of the bottom of the pronotum, so you can go a little bit past the shield too. That's okay. Pretty happy with that there. The top where the femur connects to the tibia, there is a little bit of an indent right up here on top. So I'm going to go ahead and add that so that you've got a little bit of fine detail that's true to our specimen. And then our leg is going to be coming down in this direction. And it looks like I might not have too much of a choice. It might interrupt with some of this. We're going to see what happens. So our tibia comes down, and I'm gonna try and round it like this. Yeah, that'll work. So it's narrow on the top, and then it kind of gets wider like this. And we're going to go ahead as we are moving through and erase any lines that aren't meant to be there because we are going through and kind of finalizing this. So that is the edge of our pronotum. That can stick around. This is our leg and it's above. And then we've got kind of this tibia. Now we've got to add all of those really cool thumbs and pieces. Now, I did mention earlier, but I do want to just go ahead and give us this word now too. This front pair of leg is what we call a fossorial front leg. It means digging. Fossorial is our scientific word for digging. So it's a digging leg. Now, I did add this line all the way across. In reality, it's not. It's kind of open like this. And then we have our fingers. So let's see. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4 going down. 1. And it does help that I have this line here because all of these kind of finger-like sections, these digging parts, they all end at approximately the same place. So you can take them all back up to that line. So we've got 1, 2, a little bit longer. The third one is even a little bit longer. And then the fourth one is a little bit shorter. So look at it, looks like a claw. Oh my goodness. So we've got these 4 that come down, and then you're gonna laugh, but we almost have like a thumb that comes across. And it comes across like that. And I'm going to go ahead and erase, because that thumb section is in front of all of these fingery guys. So I'm going to go ahead and erase anything in that region, and I'm going to add him back in here so that he doesn't have any problems. And he might want to be a little bit wider. All right, so that is our front tibia. And I do believe we have one more. If you see this spine right about here, that one also is pointing forward, and it's right about here. And that is also going to be where our tarsal segments are going to be connected. And so I'm going to go ahead and add it going forward, just like this on the other side. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my sketch so that we can play with the microscope for a minute and see if we can find those tarsal segments in real time. All right. That was it. So this is an image of the far leg. I just turned the specimen a little bit so that we could see the other fossorial front leg. What I'm confused about is this left leg has 3 spines and the right leg has 4 spines. That's what I was kind of looking at and seeing why they are different. They might just be different. But that's our whole tibia. It's kind of like an expanded tibia. Right about here, where you see those two little things coming off the end, I believe those are the tarsal claws, or the ends of our, or the end of our front pair of legs right here. So if we were sketching that on our mole cricket, the tarsal claws would be... three going up, two going over, this one. I think that they would be right about there. Coming off of this spine that was on the inside of the front leg, there's these two little claws here, and I believe those are the tarsal claws. Now, I've never drawn a mole cricket before, and so this is a new experience for me drawing, like, very detailed fossorial front legs, and I had a blast with that. I think that that was really cool. So let's go ahead, I'll make my sketch a little bit further away from the camera, and we can go ahead and start looking at the wings and the middle legs and all types of stuff there. I'm just giving us some words back. There we go. Grillatelpidae. That's the family name for mole crickets. All right. So we are looking back, and we want to kind of add some of these final details for our wings, and we want to look at this middle leg, how the hind legs are connected, all types of stuff in here. So that's where we're going to be looking now. I think I would be happiest to kind of start with our wing and then work down from there. I think that my wing in this case came a little bit too far down on the pronotum. I want to change it so that it comes... it's more like this. I'm going to divide it almost in half, because even though it's really wide at the base, from a lateral point of view, it's not that wide. They've got these really narrow wings, and it's not like they can fly with their wings anyway. They just have them. In fact, they have 4 wings, and they still can't fly. Silly mole crickets. All right. So I'm happy with where the wings are connected onto the top of our pronotum. So I'm going to go ahead and give that a solid line. I'm not making it all the way down to the end because I want to make sure I move the specimen so I can see some of those finer details. But I do want to also add this line, which gives us the width of our wing in the section that we are looking at. Try to straighten out my lines just a little bit, or as my mother would say, just a skosh. All right. There aren't very many wing venations in these wings, and I think that the wing veins are kind of cool on mole crickets. So I'm just going to go ahead and add some of these in here. Maybe that long, dark one. I believe if that's the first vein, that might be the coastal or the subcoastal vein. Let's see. And then all of the veins kind of branch off of that main one. So what I'm doing is, I don't have to have the exact location and the exact shape of every single one of the veins, but what I do like to know is the overall kind of feel or the patterning of the veins in areas. So down here, it looks like they're kind of splitting and wying. Up here, there are 3 veins that are a little closer to one another, and there's one that kind of is a little bit wider. So I just went and added some of those. Now, when we're looking at the rest of our body, some of these areas can be kind of tricky because there's all types of what we call lateral sclerites, or little, like pieces of the exoskeleton on the edge. But there's lots of little pieces that make up the thorax, or this area. So let's see. I'm going to add this one here. And then some diagonal lines in this direction. And then looks like this is going to be essentially the approximate length of our thoracic region. And the middle and the hind leg have to fit into here. And then the rest of this section is going to be the abdomen. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and add our middle legs while we're looking at them. This middle leg right here, we've got a femur, and it's going to be going backwards because the front legs go forward and the middle and the hind legs go backwards. I believe that to see our middle leg just a little bit easier so that you can see all of the fine details, I'm going to pick a different middle leg. Because this leg is pulled a little bit further away from the body, and we'll be able to see it all on one, all in one frame, hopefully. Yeah, very cool. So we can see the femur at the base, the tibia, and all those tarsal segments. So right here is the femur. This would be the tibia, and from here to the end, those are what we call tarsal segments. They're little toe segments, little itty toe guys. All right, so I'm going to be drawing my middle leg pretty much exactly the way you see it there, just starting right about here. So our femur is going to be coming out in this direction. And I want to give my femur approximately the correct size, and then I can base everything off of the femur. Now, I do want to make sure that where it ends in kind of this triangular shape, or make sure that this line is going straight down, because then you have an easier time connecting and putting the tibia going in the correct direction, which is down. You want that tibia to be going kind of in this downward direction. Our tibia does have what we call tibial spurs, or kind of like spines at the end of the tibia. You can see one of them pretty clearly right about here. There's a pretty sharp tibial spur. But it looks like there are a number of them. Let's zoom in. Cool. Awesome. So if we are looking at our mole cricket from this angle, you can see right about here and here, you have two tibial spurs. And then if you look right here, it almost looks like one of the tarsal segments, that first one. It also has a little, has a spine. We only call them spurs if they're at the end of the segment. We call them spines if they're in the middle of the segment. Who made that up? I'm not sure. So there's one spur, there's two spurs, and then the tarsal segments are going to be coming out in this direction. So that hind spur gets mostly gone, but you can still see it a little bit. See? You can see its remnants. And then our first tarsal segment has its own spine that's going to be right about here. So if you look at it, it almost looks like it has 3 little spines in a row. Then you've got a second very short tarsal segment. Yep. And then one that's a tiny bit longer that also has the tarsal claws. And that is going to be the middle leg of our friend here. All right, now all we need to add is our hind leg. Now I like to add the legs and then go back and add some of the features on the body because a lot of times that bottom line of the thorax is we have to erase it anyway because the legs go over it. So let's go ahead and check out these hind legs. So if you were reading about these legs in a book and they were referencing which leg, front, middle, hind legs, sometimes they'll say pro leg, meso leg, and meta leg, meaning the first, the second, and the third. Sometimes they say foreleg, mid leg, and hind leg. So it just depends on the author as to kind of what they call each leg. But if you know all the terms, then you know them. So we had started with that kind of wide light color box here that we mentioned was the hind coccyx. And we actually do want that to mostly stay there. We are gonna probably fix some of those features in a moment, but it helps us to know where we're starting. Because if you look right about here, that is the segment that connects to the coccyx. We call that the trochanter, and it sits between this square right here and the femur, right? So if we come here to the end of that square and we give it kind of like a pizza slice or like a triangular piece, this side is going to be connected to the coccyx, and this side connects back to the femur. And the femur is actually, this hind leg is really nice and long. In fact, if this hind leg got stretched out, it would go past the end of the abdomen. But we're going to make sure that it's nice and bent so that it stays on our image. We'll get Terry out of the way. All right, so that's our trochanter here. The femur is very, it's kind of straight on the bottom side, but it has that really dramatic arch on the top of the femur. It almost makes the femur look bent. I think that's kind of funny. All right, and then it gets narrow. And that's the end of our femur here. Now our tibia is going to be coming down in this direction, like this. Round it out. And I'm going to go ahead, we're going to zoom into the end of our tibia, because what's cool is there's all these wild tibial spurs here. These legs are not really meant to dig, but the hind legs do have the ability to kind of push dirt around. So if you see here, this is the end of our tibia, and it has 1, 2, 3, 4 spines, all kind of at the end of the tibia here. And if you imagine them, they kind of hook into the soil, and they do kind of give them traction for just a little bit of jumping. It is a cricket, so it does kind of have these legs that appear like they could jump. I don't think I've ever seen a mole cricket jump, but I guess it's possible. All right. So I like to add those spines first and then go back in and add the the tarsal segments. So it looks like we're going to do 2 short ones on the edges and 2 long ones in the middle. So 1, 2, 3, 4 of those kind of spines here. And then I'm going to, you're going to laugh at me because I draw them and then erase them. But I want to know where they're going to be. So I'm happy with that. And then I'm going to erase right here in the middle of them because that's where our tarsal segments get connected. So right about here, I'm going to connect our first tarsal segment. And then redo some of those spines just to make sure they're in the right spot. I love that a lot. All right, so that is our first tarsal segment. The second one is that nice thin segment right there. The third one is long and roundy. And she does have 2 tarsal claws right here and right there. 1, 2. I think our hind leg's not big enough. Like drastically not big enough. That was my bad. I was paying too much attention to the segments and I didn't look back at what our specimen was looking like overall. Give me a moment while I fix the shaping on our friend here. Because if that's our front leg, our middle leg has to be at least as wide as it. Because our front and our middle legs are very large, whereas our middle leg can be nice and small like this. But I think I took that small energy from the middle leg, and then it got sucked into that hind leg. There we go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do this, but really quickly. I have to erase it and make it a little bigger and move it around. But because I've already given you all of the descriptions for these, this should be pretty fast. Sorry, guys. So, has anyone out there ever seen a mole cricket in real life? A lot of times mole crickets are found in and around kind of water bodies, around water bodies. They really like to dig in areas that are really, that are kind of muddy soil. They probably have an easier time digging through it. So they like to live on the edges of rivers. Alrighty. Looking good. So we've got our middle leg, our hind leg taken care of. You've never seen a mole cricket or a camel cricket. Wow. So it's crazy because so many people here in Pennsylvania or in the Philadelphia region have seen camel crickets just because they're in people's homes. Like camel crickets like to be in people's basements. They have a handful of different common names, also including a cave cricket. And in Philly, they get the name spricket because they look a little bit like a mixture between a spider and a cricket. And that was a common name I hadn't heard until I moved to the Philadelphia region, which was kind of fun. All right, so now is the time of the live stream where you can laugh at me. I thought I was doing good. I was just a little young entomologist. I didn't even have a degree yet. I was just pinning my bugs and doing the thing and all of the learning. And I tried to dissect and stuff this guy with cotton. And he has just a little bit of cotton sticking out of his underside. We're not going to turn it over because this side doesn't look horrible. You've only seen tree crickets and black garden crickets. Cool. All right. So the tree crickets that you've seen are nice and thin and green. Are your tree crickets green? I don't think we've sketched a tree cricket yet together. That could be a fun one to do. I just wanted to double check the bottom side of the thoracic region just to make sure I was about on for just kind of finishing it up here. Yeah, so the trochanter is along the bottom of the body, and we've got some segments, but that's okay. So the bottom of our thorax is just going to be running along this line here. And then you can go in here and add this kind of longer square. That's our coccyx or our hip bone. We have a couple of more segments in here. You can add some finer details, but those ones are not as important. All right, let's get to this abdomen. Yes, slender and green. Awesome. You know, I don't think we've sketched a tree cricket yet. That's definitely one that we can put on the list, because I do believe I have one. I'd have to double check. If I don't have one, I'll definitely be collecting one next spring. I'm closing in on the end of, like, we've done a whole lot of the families that I have in my collection. So we're closing in on, I don't know exactly what we're going to sketch if we run out of bugs. All right, let's see. It looks like, from what we can see, there are about 4 abdominal segments after the legs here. Although that might not be the truest case, but that's all right. We're going to do this. So this is our thorax. We're going to come around. There is, if you notice, a little bit of a space in between the abdominal region and the end of those, the tips of those wings. You can see that wing where it ends here becomes very narrow. And then I wonder, oh man, I think that this right here is the front wing. You see how this line comes to here, and then there's another one that comes here? I believe that these short areas, this short, thicker wing here, is the front wing, and then this one that's narrow and thin coming out the end, it looks a little bit like a tail, I believe that's the hind wing coming out from underneath. And that's crazy because I'd never put that together. I thought that they were, I thought that it was one wing, but now looking at it under a microscope, I do believe that those are the hind wings sticking out. So we've got those front wings, and then we have hind wings. They come out and they make it all the way to a point, and then they come back in. Now, our hind wings are almost leaf-like because they have one kind of central vein, and then they have alternating cross veins that get larger towards the base and smaller towards the tip. All right. When we add that abdomen in here, there is a little bit of white space in between where the wings are and where the abdomen is. And what I'm going to do is just make that even across. Now, it looks like we have about 4, so I'm going to annotate 1, 2, 3, 4. And then at each one of these segments, there's not a whole lot of separation in between the segments. So what I'm just going to do is add those little L's in there, but not erase much, because that is going to get us the shape that we're looking for. The bottom side is going to be pretty smooth, so you can leave it smooth like that. And then we have the cerci. Now, the cerci are segmented, and they are nice and long, and they go as long, or maybe even a little longer than the wings, the hind wings. They're also very finely segmented, and they have hairs coming off of them. And I would believe that those hairs are sensory hairs, like chemical sensors. I still have to take an insect physiology class or start reading an insect physio book so that I know a little bit more about the internal workings of insects. So I'm just going to be doing the one. Gets kind of wider at the base and it goes narrow to the tip. It's many segmented. And it has fine hairs coming off of it. I am pretty happy with our mole cricket. I think that if there were things that I would change, I would make sure that I sketched my mole cricket a little bit further up here. Haha, there's all this blank space here, and I think that my abdomen is just a little bit short, but that's what I had to work with on my paper. But other than that, so that's the thing that I do, is I start with the head too big. And if the head is too big and I start making the body just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's funny. I'm erasing some of this extra graphite in here to make it a little bit cleaner. Alrighty. Yay! That's our mole cricket. I was kind of curious to see our mole cricket from straight head on. So I'm just going to go ahead and look at him like this really quick. How cute he is. Cutie patootie. Right here. Those big red on the side of his face, those are his mandibles. I love that its mandibles are a different color than the rest of its mouth parts. Lots of hairs. It also looks like the very front of its head almost ends in a triangle, like a point. You see right here, there's this point before the upper lip. That's kind of cool. Oh, thank you so much, Natalie. Yay! Happy Thanksgiving to you too. I will not be live streaming on Thursday on Thanksgiving. So the next time that you can see me is next Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern. I am so glad that you got to catch me today. This is my final sketch of my mole cricket. I think that sometimes you can see it even better if I just show it up to this camera in its entirety. I hope that your sketch was awesome too, and that you enjoyed hanging out with me and chatting with me, and also drawing our beautiful mole cricket here. Keep in mind that I do teach classes like very similar to this on a platform called OutSchool. It's up there, and it's for students ages 5 to 8, 9 to 12. I use less scientific words, but we have just as much fun. So if you know a student, you can always use the link in the description box below, and they get $20 for free classes if you sign up using my link. That would equate to 2 of our weekly insect studies classes, which is a whole lot of fun. Scientific illustration for students is $12 a class, so it's almost 2 of those classes also. right about here is where you can subscribe to, well, it's a reminder to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not already. Now, right about there, there's a little QR code. It's a link to my PayPal account. If you've enjoyed your time today and you'd like to throw me a couple of dollars, I always super duper appreciate it. That goes directly to my PayPal account to help me keep my collection up to date, to keep me with pins and pens and paper and all the things I need to keep this live stream up and running. If you would like to email me your sketch, or if you want to share your sketch with me, you can go ahead and email me at trisha@theinsectopia.com. And if you are going to share it on social media, you can always use the hashtag @Insectopia, but you have to remember to add the @2015. Because admittedly, I'm not just Insectopia on Facebook or Instagram. Somebody got it first. All right. So, oops, that's not the right one. All right. So, thank you so much for spending your day with me. I hope to see you all again. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I'm going to be taking Thursday off, and I will see everyone next Sunday at 4, or December 1st, I believe, is our next Thursday. Yep, December 1st. Oh, my goodness, closing in on Christmas. That's crazy. Have a wonderful night, and I look forward to seeing you again. Stay buggy.